During this hour, we've looked at the cost of carbon in Europe, and we saw some stunning video from Germany and Central Europe. And this, what was called a once in a 500-year flood in southern Germany, also affected a lot of other parts of Central and also Eastern Europe. Germany got the brunt of it, and you see from these images that the cost of carbon in the form of these much larger, more intense floods enhanced by man-made global warming has been very high. The infrastructure has been inadequate. Of course, people try to save their own businesses and homes, and you heard the human stories of those who were profoundly affected. Also, people in Austria were affected, the Slovak Republic, the Czech Republic. In Hungary, the same kinds of terrible impacts where they also paid the cost of carbon. We have been seeing in the United Kingdom the biggest rainfalls over an extended period of time ever. This past year was the wettest year ever recorded in the United Kingdom. Here's a video from Newcastle.
The worst storm anyone here can remember quickly turned a summer evening into a disaster. Weeks of rain fell in 2 hours, followed by flash floods. At one point, more than 20,000 homes were without electricity.
There used to be an old saying about sending coal to Newcastle. Well, the cost of carbon came to Newcastle. And in Scotland, where golf is said to be invented, the Scottish Open paid some of the cost of carbon this year. We have seen the same kind of unusual storms in the Iberian Peninsula, in Spain. We've seen it in Italy, where this massive flood had a very tough and big toll. In Eastern Europe, with Albania, where the River Drini reached record levels, and in Bosnia and Montenegro, throughout the Balkans, and in Greece, where earlier this year massive floods hit. Also in Turkey, where they have been paying the cost of carbon. In Russia, just 1 year ago, where a massive downpour caused incredible damage. Also in the Amur region of Russia. We heard this hour about the extraordinary fires in Russia just 3 years ago. Their records go back almost 1,000 years, and there has never been anything approaching the drought and the fire damage that occurred just 3 years ago in Russia. And we heard about the respiratory illnesses, the loss of life, the smoke damage. But just 4 months after this, there was other damage. The president of Russia at that time, now the prime minister of Russia, said this event demonstrated to him how all leaders have to make more strenuous efforts to fight against climate change. 4 months after these fires and all the smoke damage, Russia and Ukraine and Kazakhstan halted all of their grain exports to world markets. And what happened was that pushed the price of grain to the second all-time record high in recorded history. Now, this second peak, right after the Russian fires, happens to be the exact moment in time when a food vendor in Tunisia set himself on fire and started the Arab Spring. There were many other factors that led to that uprising. But when food prices go up, those of us in developed countries maybe don't feel it as much because the percentage of our budgets on average that are spent on food is pretty small. But in the poor countries of the world, they can spend 50, 60, 70% of their household budgets on food. So these food price spikes can cause food riots and all kinds of disruptions. Well, the same kinds of fires that hit Russia also hit the Balkans, hit Greece. In many areas, we see the same thing in Spain and Portugal. And the droughts that are predicted in the decades ahead in Europe are really beyond the imagination. I want to focus just briefly on this. This color on the legend, this is extreme drought, exceptional drought, and this is the worst possible drought. Look at what is projected for all of southern Europe and Turkey and parts of North Africa in the decades ahead if we continue to pay the cost of carbon by avoiding a policy of putting a price on carbon so we can stop encouraging the emissions of all this global warming pollution. It's impossible to imagine what this would mean to the world to have that kind of devastating, extended, continuing drought throughout southern Europe. This is the largest river in France. The Loire has been called the Garden of France, the Loire Valley. And there have always been droughts from time to time, but this kind of condition is predicted to be almost permanent a few decades from now unless we take action. Switzerland is not really supposed to look like this. We saw the same extended deep drought in Spain, also in the Balkans, again, Serbia, affecting agriculture in Bulgaria and Macedonia. The cost of carbon in the form of the lost infrastructure, the wildfires, drought, sea level rise, agricultural losses, and all the rest is a cost that we're already paying. So we need to put a price on carbon in the markets so that we can avoid paying the cost of carbon in these other ways. We need to put a price on denial in political systems so that we can make the kinds of changes that reasonable people understand are greatly needed. Now, Europe has been leading the way for quite some time toward renewable energy. The Vatican, and oh, may I say on a personal basis, and I know so many hundreds of millions agree, what a wonderful inspiration this new Pope is. But the Vatican has announced it's going to be the first state to become carbon neutral completely. It's very small, has God on its side, has a couple of advantages, but it's inspiring. And we're seeing in England very large commitments to solar, and this also is inspiring. Spain is now backing away a little bit, but it has made a great contribution to the boosting of solar energy worldwide. Portugal also, Denmark, which is known for wind, but has invested in solar as well. And by the way, where Danish wind is concerned, this turbine by itself can power 6,000 homes. Denmark now gets 30% of all of its energy from wind power. It is really quite a remarkable development. They're leading the world. And of course, this leads to the creation of jobs in Denmark with the construction of wind towers. And Sweden and elsewhere in Scandinavia, you're seeing this commitment to renewable energy. In Scotland, this is the largest offshore wind farm, the London Array, and in Wales, an idyllic scene. Turkey has great wind resources that they're just beginning to tap. And you know, we've talked about solar and wind, but we should not neglect geothermal power. Iceland now gets 100% of its energy from renewable sources, including from its commitment to these massive reserves of geothermal energy, lots of employment, lots of energy. Paris is also exploring geothermal energy, this within the city limits of Paris. Now, this is another source, district heating, where you have extra heat, in this case from a data center, that can be used to heat buildings. This is a biomass facility in a village in Germany where they're getting all of their energy in this way. We have not talked a lot about wave power, but in many countries in Europe, there's a great initiative to exploit this great resource. And again, we're seeing the creation of jobs in building these systems. So once again, we need to put a price on carbon to speed up this transition and put a price on denial so that we can enact the policies that are needed to save the future of our civilization. We have been talking about Europe in this hour. In the next hour, we're going to be talking about Africa. The overall message on the cost of carbon is very simple. We need to put a price on carbon We need to put a price on denial.